This gin-heavy heaven, blessed ground to think, gay and mean, we. Bless the fake ID and the bouncer who knew this need to be needed, to belong, to know how. A man taste full-on vodka and free of sin. I know not which God to pray to. I look to Christ. I look to every mouth on the dance floor. I order a whiskey coke. Name it the blood of my new Savior. He is just. He begs me to dance, to marvel men with the dash of hips I brought. He deems my mouth in some stranger's mouth necessary. Bless that man's mouth, the song we slay sloppy to, the beat, the bridge, the length of his hands on my thigh and back, and I know not which country I am of. I want to live on his tongue, build a home of gospel and gaiety. I want to raise a city behind his teeth for all the boys of choirs and closets to refuge in. I want my new God to look at the Mecca I built him and call it damn good, or maybe I'm just tipsy and free for the first time, willing to worship anything I can taste. The reason I chose this poem is because I feel like in my public school education, especially in our poetry units in elementary and high school and middle school and all those things, there was a complete lack of LGBTQ plus representation. From my experience in education, I also feel like everything I've read about the LGBTQ plus community being represented in literature or poetry is always about the struggle and the fear, normally about coming out or things like that. But what I found really interesting about Smith's work is that it's a story of liberation, not one of fear. As a queer person of color, it's safe to assume that Smith experiences a lot of the oppression, unfortunately, the LGBTQ plus community faces day to day. They are constantly silenced, especially in literature and the school board's curriculum in most public schools. However, what I find most interesting is they use their poetry and their gift to spread a sense of empowerment through this poem instead of making it one of the sorrows and the tribulations of being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. They really emphasize the sense of community one finds in it, and the strength one can find in expressing themselves. So here I included an image of the poem, and I underlined a bunch of themes in religion that can be found throughout the poem. And what I found really interesting about this is that Smith chooses to include religion as one of the main themes of the poem, as religion is something that's well known to be one of the main oppressors of the LGBTQ plus community. It's used as an excuse for hatred very often, and I think it's really interesting how they chose to contrast their personal experience of personal enlightenment to a religious awakening. Instead of writing a poem about religion or the way religion tears them down, they choose to write one where they are worshiping this new sense of community and self-enlightenment and personal embracement that they feel that they hadn't experienced before and they're experiencing for the first time. Here I boxed off to think gay and mean we, because I feel like this is a great example of the sense of community they're trying to express throughout this poem. When they walk into this club, they no longer feel outcasted. They no longer feel as if they're the outsider. There is no gay, there is no queer, there is just we. There's the community that they've been looking for and that they've finally found, and they want to build this almost religion-like empire off of to make others feel that we. Here I also highlighted how I found the tone change throughout the first and second half of the poem really interesting. I believe they put the dash kind of in that middle spot to separate the two different emotions and realizations of their experience at this club. There's a really clear example of the contrast of their emotions going in and being there. When they go in, they still haven't felt that sense of belonging. They just know that they need to feel it, which I highlighted the part, this need to be needed, to belong, to know how, showcases the fact that that feeling wasn't felt before, and that's why they were going in, because they needed to feel that sense of liberation. The second half of this poem is kind of where the emotion amps up from this sense of anxious needing to belong and find a sense of community to finding it and wanting to spread it, because they understand how liberating it is to finally obtain that community and be a part of it. When they say, I want to raise a city behind his teeth for all the boys of choirs and closets to refuge in, they're essentially proposing the fact that They want this feeling that they feel now, this feeling of joy and comfort in their sexuality. They want that feeling for every closeted boy or girl or person, everybody who doesn't feel like they belong. Throughout the themes of religion, the change in tone in the essay, and Smith's use of language to empower the LGBTQ plus community, we can see that their work isn't one of fear or misunderstanding or feeling alone, but it's one of creating a sense of community, which is something that a lot of LGBTQ people embrace, and it deserves to be recognized more through literature and poetry. So I'm really glad that Smith's work could do that.